We are stepping into a new year on the Christian calendar with the beginning of Advent. And Advent is not just pre-Christmas, it's its own whole thing. And it's a season of 4 weeks, 4 Sundays, and the weeks that follow. Starting in the 16th century, German Lutherans, wanting to inject a little bit more personal piety into their celebration of Advent, invented what is now the Advent wreath, with the 4 candles on the 4 Sundays being lit to mark the themes of hope, peace, joy, and love. It took about 3 centuries for this tradition to move outside of Germany and outside of Lutheranism to be a part of more Christian practice. Before that, much before that, beginning with the season of fasting that preceded Christmas in the early church, the 4 weeks were a little darker, let's say. Instead of hope, peace, joy, and love, the themes that were considered were death, judgment, heaven, and hell, also known as the 4 last things. So whether we're considering hope and peace and joy and love, or death and judgment and heaven and hell, Advent is a solemn season. It's a season marked by waiting, which is what hope is at its most essential level. It's marked by penance, a time of repenting preparation for the coming of Christ, both at Christmas, his first Advent, but then also, as we heard today in the gospel reading, at his second Advent, at the end of history. And so Advent becomes for us a season in which we feel and recognize that we are caught between the times of Christ's first Advent and his final Advent. Being caught between the times, though, doesn't leave us in limbo. It doesn't leave us without hope, and it certainly doesn't leave us with nothing to do. One of the things that we have the joy of recognizing, being caught between Christ's first Advent and his second or final Advent, are what we might call the third Advents of Christ, his everyday little arrivals to us. How does Christ come to me today? How does Christ attend to me today? How does Christ accompany me today? By his Spirit, Christ is always coming to us. There's a beautiful poem called Advent Sunday. Did anyone take the time to read that in the newsletter? It was linked. It's okay if you didn't. I'm going to read it for you now. But there's a beautiful poem by the British poet Christina Rossetti, which doesn't sound like a British name. It's an Italian name. Her family had immigrated from Italy to Britain a few generations before her birth. And she was related to painters and novelists and poets of all kinds. But she wrote a poem called Advent Sunday, which is another name for the first Sunday of Advent. And she talks about the 10 bridesmaids from the parable of the 10 bridesmaids. You have 5 wise who prepare themselves for the bridegroom's coming and 5 unwise who don't. She also will allude to several parts of the biblical story, and she'll lead us to a place where we are ready to encounter Christ face to face. Listen with me. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out, with lighted lamps and garlands round about, to meet him in a rapture with a shout. Rapture being a word for joy, not the taking away of people. It may be at the midnight, black as pitch, Earth shall cast up her poor, cast up her rich. It may be at the crowing of the cock, earth shall upheave her depth, uproot her rock. For lo, the bridegroom fetcheth home the bride. His hands are hands she knows his side. Like pure Rebekah at the appointed place, veiled she unveils her face to meet his face. Like great Queen Esther in her triumphing, she triumphs in the presence of her king. His eyes are as a dove's, and she's dove-eyed. He knows her lovely mirror, sister, bride. He speaks with dove voice of exceeding love, and she with love voice of an answering dove. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, we out, with lamps ablaze and garlands round about, to meet him in a rapture with a shout. You can hear the different themes of this Sunday and this season come up. There's the apocalypse, right? We don't know when it might be coming. It might be at midnight when the sky is black as pitch and the earth will bring forth both the poor and the rich. Or it may be at the dawn, the crowing of the cock, and you can hear echoes of Peter's recognition of his own denial of Christ. And the earth shall upheave her depth, uproot her rock, when the bridegroom fetcheth home the bride. You can hear the story of the 10 bridesmaids. You can hear echoes of the biblical story where Rebekah unveils her face for Isaac, or where Esther glories in the presence of her king. Because when Christ comes, the church, as his bride, will unveil her face. That's work that only the bride can do. She unveils her own face. We will glory in the presence of our king, just like Esther did when he arrives. We'll know his hands by the marks that he bears for us. We'll know his side. We'll know his face. We will be ready. The little apocalypse from Matthew chapter 24 is a passage that shows up in Matthew and Mark and Luke, where Christ talks about what it will be like when the Son of Man comes. But what is apocalyptic language for? It's a question that's very important to ask anytime we wade into this kind of literature. Apocalypse is a word in Greek that when you translate it to Latin just means revelation. It's an unveiling, a showing forth. So if apocalyptic language is for revealing, what is being revealed? It's the coming of the Son of Man. Son of Man being a name that Christ uses for himself throughout the Gospels, a name that's loaded from its use in Ezekiel and Daniel. It really means human one. It's not necessarily gendered in the way that we hear it so often. It means someone who is human will come as God's person, as God's agent, as God's Messiah or Christ. He will come and he will reveal our hope. What is our hope? It's important to remember that at this point in Matthew's gospel, Christ has not yet been crucified. He is on the Mount of Olives with his disciples. He has entered into Jerusalem for the final time. He is getting ready to pray. He will come back to this place to pray at his arrest. When Jesus talks about the coming of the Son of Man, he is in a very real sense talking about the present moment that he and his disciples are in. He's talking about what will be happening a week from now when he is lifted up on the cross. Right? He uses this language, after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light and the stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. When Jesus is crucified, there will be signs in the skies. The sun will go dark. In Matthew's gospel, there's an earthquake. There's even the talk that holy people from long ago have been raised from the dead. Did you know the Bible has zombies in it? The veil in the temple will be torn in two. These are the signs that Jesus is pointing toward. When the Son of Man comes, his sign in the heavens is him lifted on the cross. For Christ on the cross catches all the moments of his life up in one moment. He is no more human than he is on the cross, where he is subjected to suffering and death. Just before this, Jesus talks about the abomination of desolation. There is no abomination of desolation more desolating than the killing of the Son of God. Our killing of the Son of God, who is God the Son. It's important to remember how shameful crucifixion was. How Rome, the most powerful empire in the world at that time, used it as a tool to subjugate the people that it conquered. People were crucified publicly. They were hung up to enact shame on the nations and peoples and cultures who were conquered, who refused to submit to Rome's conquering. It was an especially painful and traumatic form of death. And the message that Rome was sending was, if you do not submit, this too will be your fate. Jesus experiences the lowest lows of what it means to be human in those moments of crucifixion and death. But when Jesus is speaking these words to his disciples in this passage, they are still waiting for that moment. We live in light of it. Apocalyptic language can be confusing. It's often what we today struggle with most in trying to understand who Jesus is, what his ministry is like, what he calls us to. Apocalyptic language can tempt us into predicting or controlling. The temptation to predict is powerful, and it's been shown again and again and again through history to not bear out the way that those who would predict it have assumed it would. In fact, Jesus warns us against prediction, first by telling us that you understand how to read the times. When the fig tree puts out its shoots and its leaves start to form, you know that summer is near. So also when you see all these things, right? The sun darkening, the moon not giving its light, the stars falling from heaven, the powers of the heavens being shaken. When you see all these things taking place, you will know that the coming of the Son of Man is near. It's at the very gates. Jesus says, I say that this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth might pass away, but my words will not pass away. And then he immediately follows that up by saying, but concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. Even he doesn't know when that day is. And so it requires a kind of careful watching without giving in to the temptation to predict, without giving in to the temptation to control. That's what predicting is. It's the attempt to take control of the situation, to say that I know what the outcome will be, or I know how to make this turn out the way that I want it to. So apocalypse can tempt us, but instead it should train us. Watching the fig tree is slow and patient work. It feels like doing nothing, and yet it's actually doing everything. We cannot make the fig tree put out its shoots. We cannot say on which day it will put out its leaves, but if we attend to it very carefully, if we give ourselves over to watching it, then when it puts out its leaves, we will be ready. We will know that summer is near. Apocalypse should train us in patience. It should train us in hope, which is the theme of the first Sunday of Advent. For what is hope, if not patience? The prophet Isaiah has a word come to him from the Lord. That in the latter days, the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains and shall be lifted up above the hills. Why? So that all the nations will flow to it, and many peoples shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. In those latter days, at the end of time, God will draw all nations to himself. Out from Zion will go forth the law and the word of the Lord, which we know is Jesus. There he shall judge between the nations and shall decide disputes for many peoples. And when God is judging and deciding, what are the people doing? They're not condemning each other. They are not preparing to go to war. Instead, they are beating their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, because making judgments and decisions is no longer theirs to do. They've given it to God. In that day, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And the people of God, the house of Jacob, are invited to come and walk in the light of the Lord. That very light that teaches them to beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. The people of God lead the way, lead that parade up to Jerusalem in that light that goes out from Zion, that goes out from Jerusalem. Jesus is that law. He is that word. He is that light. And he will do that work then at the end of time when he returns. But he is also doing that work now in the little advents of the everyday, when he comes to us, when he encounters us, when he attends to us, when he accompanies us. Just after Jesus delivers this apocalyptic word, teaching us to be patient, showing us how to hope, he gives a few parables. Parable of a faithful and wise servant contrasted with an unwise and unfaithful servant. There's a parable of 10 virgins or 10 bridesmaids, and a parable of talents. I love the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, but because of the way that we order our year here at Jacob's Well, where the 2 Sundays between All Saints and All Souls and Christ the King, we talk about stewardship, we never get to have this parable because it falls on one of those 2 Sundays every 3rd year. And so, inspired by Christina Rossetti's poem, and the fact that it follows closely on the heels of Matthew's little apocalypse, I wanted to use the image of the 10 virgins, the 10 bridesmaids, as the theme for Advent this year. We are like them. We are invited to be them, both by Jesus when he tells the parable and by the poet when she gives us her poem. She says, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out with lighted lamps and garland round about." And so our Advent series this year is called Lamps and Garland. But we go out to meet him in a rapture with a shout, with great joy at his arrival. But in order to meet him with great joy instead of great anguish, we must be ready for his appearance. We must be ready for his coming. There is stuff to do while we wait. The parable of the 10 virgins, Jesus says, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this." 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, "Here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. They got their wicks ready to be lit. And the foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves." And while they were going out to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he answered, "Truly, I say to you, I do not know you. Watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Jesus is emphasizing the need for watchfulness, for patience, and for hope, not in our waiting to give up on his coming, to make ourselves busy with other things, but to take up an active waiting. There is stuff to do while we wait. After the parable of the 10 virgins and the parable of the talents, Jesus tells a story about when the Son of Man comes in his glory. When he sits on his glorious throne and he judges the nations. He separates them into groups on his right and on his left. And he tells the group on the right that they are welcome to come into his kingdom, that his Father's prepared from before the foundation of the world, because when he was hungry or thirsty, they gave him something to eat and something to drink. When he was a stranger, they welcomed him. When he was naked, they clothed him. When he was sick, they took care of him. When he was in prison, they visited him. And those on his right, they answer him saying, "Lord, when did we see you in any or all of these conditions and take care of you?" And Jesus says, "When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me." There is stuff to do while we wait. The psalm that we read together this morning encourages us, implores us, exhorts us, commands us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Yes, it means to pray for peace in literal Jerusalem, which for so long has not been a place of peace, despite its name, including the word for peace. Shalom. But it also means to pray for the places where God's people dwell, to be places of peace. Places not only where God's people take care of each other well, but where God's people take care of the world well. And not just a cessation from fighting or strife or anger or discord, but a making of the conditions for flourishing for all people. That's what shalom means. in Hebrew. It's a deep peace, the kind of peace that God established when he made everything and called it very good. These are the conditions under which God's creation can thrive. So when we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, what we're actually praying for, in addition to the peace of the city over there in Israel, Palestine, is also the peace of every place where God's people gather and dwell. The places that God calls them to be fed by God, and the places that God sends them from for the peace of the world. There's stuff to do while we wait. Praying is active. We give our hearts and our minds, we give our souls and our bodies to that future day, living that future day today. And instead of giving in to the temptation to predict and control outcomes, we are able to do the kinds of things that Christ on the throne judges as good things to do. We don't have to be in charge to feed the hungry. We don't have to be in control to give drink to the thirsty. We don't have to set the agenda in order to care for those who are sick or welcome those who are strangers. We do not have to be in control of the purse strings in order to go and be with those who are in prison. We can do those things from our place here. We don't have to wait for the day when somehow, by some mechanism, we are in control. We don't have to wait for the day. We don't have to pull the strings of the marionettes. We don't have to somehow get in control of things, nations or organizations. And when I say we, I mean the people of God. We don't have to position ourselves in places of power in order to do these things. We can do these from the position of weakness. We can do this from the margins because it's the margins to which we are called. The reason that we can do this from a place of weakness is because the sign of the Son of Man is the Son of God on a cross, showing us that God is willing to be weak for our sake. So what do we do while we wait? While we wait, like Israel waited for its Messiah to come. What do we do while we wait? While we wait as the church for our Messiah to return? We welcome him. That's what we do. That's what our waiting looks like. We welcome him in all of these little advents as he comes to us every day, every week. We feed him when he's hungry. We give him drink when he's thirsty. We welcome him when he's a stranger. We clothe him when he's naked. We care for him when he's sick, and we go to him in prison when he is unjustly detained. What do we do while we wait? We make the story of the Scriptures our story so that when the bridegroom comes to fetcheth home the bride, we recognize his hands and his side. We know the story so well that we see ourselves like Rebekah, meeting Isaac at the appointed place, ready to unveil our face to meet his face. Like the lovers in the Song of Songs, we see that his eyes are as a dove's and that we match his eyes, dove-eyed, so that he sees us as his mirror and as his sister and as his bride. We put ourselves in proximity to him so that when he comes with a dove voice of exceeding love, bringing peace, that we are capable of answering with our own love voice, like an answering dove. We trim our wicks and make sure we have enough oil that our lamps are ablaze. And we make everything ready. We have garland round about. We decorate. We make ourselves ready. I want to end with the story of a saint that I was deeply touched by as I learned more about him this week. Does anyone know St. John of the Cross? If I say that name, do you know who I'm talking about? St. John of the Cross was a post-Reformation Spanish monk who sought to reform the Carmelite movement, which was a specific Benedictine order in Spain. He thought they had gotten away from their true calling, their true vocation, and he wanted to, like almost every Reformation group wants to, they want to get back to the heart of things, and so they want to give up the power, the trappings, the riches, all of the things that they've accumulated through the centuries so that they can get back to the main thing. But the Carmelites had accumulated wealth and power and prestige, and so being asked to give it up was not something they really wanted to do. So priests and monks from another monastery came and got St. John of the Cross, and they captured him and they took him back to their monastery, and they put him in a closet in the dungeon. It was so small that he could not stand up. And he was not let out. So that's where he slept and went to the restroom. It's where he ate his food. He was only taken out to be beaten, and then he would be put back in, and so there wasn't enough room for him to stretch out, and there was no one tending to his wounds, and so his broken bones and his aches and pains, they caused him to become deformed. And after being there for, I think, 4 years, he had a visitation from God, and he was told that his faithfulness had been seen and noted, that his waiting was going to bear fruit, and that a day for his escape was going to be coming soon. And a few weeks later, an opportunity to escape came, and he was able to return to safety. He didn't live much longer past that, maybe a year or two. And he was an invalid at this point. He was confined to his bed. He needed constant care from fellow monks. But one day, he kind of astounded everybody. He said, "I need to get ready. I need to make my bed." And so he insisted that he got help cleaning the sheets and making the bed, and then he got himself cleaned up. He rinsed off, he washed off, he got into his clean bed, and he asked his brothers to read to him from the Song of Songs, and they got about halfway through the book, and he said out loud, "The flowers, they're so beautiful." And then he died. I think he was glimpsing the flowers of heaven. I think he had put himself in such a place to know that the Song of Songs is about the soul that loves God and God's love for that soul. He had endured suffering through his waiting, but at that moment, he was able to discern the times. He was able to understand his own body, his own longing for Jesus. And so out of nowhere, he wanted everything just right because he could tell that summer was coming, that the Son of Man was at the very gates. And he was ready to welcome him when he came. We're not all saints. I know that I'm not a saint. I long myself for that kind of saintliness, but I wonder what that would do to my children. But that kind of waiting, that's what we're called to do in these moments. That is the kind of patience that Jesus makes possible in us and for us. ultimately, that is what we hope for. We want him to stand on the mountain. We want him to bring that last day. And in order to want that well, there is stuff for us to do while we wait. This Advent season, let us not grow weary in doing good, as St. Paul said to the Galatians. Not for its own sake, but so that we see in our neighbor, our brother and sister, those everyday comings of Christ. That we're ready to meet him then, and we're ready to meet him at that last day. Let's pray together.